my name is Daniel. I'm a fourth-year Ph.D. student in computer science department, and I'm here to introduce today's What Matters to Me and Why series event. First, welcome to the February edition of the What Matters to Me and Why series. As its name implies, once a month, we have a distinguished faculty or staff member talk about, well, what matters to them and why. And today we're going to have Lorraine Evangelista from nursing talk. The What Matters to Me and Why series is an opportunity to bring the community together to promote the 7 values of UCI. These values are, and I have to look these up each time, respect, intellectual curiosity, integrity, commitment, empathy, appreciation, and I'll let you take the last one.
Fun.
Yes, we all learned something. And in the spirit of fun, please take 1 minute to greet each other. Just a few housekeeping rules and announcements. First, make sure you fill out the survey that we handed to each one of you. They're very important. There are reasons why we stopped handing out pizza and went back to the Subway lunches after popular demand. As a courtesy to humanities, please throw away your food in the proper trash receptacles. We want to be good stewards to the School of Humanities. And also, this is a recorded event. So if you want your beautiful faces on camera, please move to the front. Otherwise, move to the back. And next month, we will have Lorelei Tangi from the library speaking. And I think I see her somewhere in the back. Hello. And I'm going to hand the mic over to Doug Haynes, who will introduce the speaker today.
Thank you, Daniel. I want to welcome you all to this terrific installment of What Matters to Me and Why. I am so delighted to welcome our speaker today, Professor of Nursing Science, Lorraine Evangelista. In part because I'm a historian of medicine and health sciences, and I'm just staggered by the contributions far and wide that nursing professionals have made and are making. Professor Evangelista will be the first representative from the School of Nursing Sciences to participate in What Matters to Me and Why, and we look forward to other members of nursing science to participate. Professor Evangelista is not only a professor, but also serves as the Senior Director of Academic Programs in the Program of Nursing Science. The program was assigned, Nursing Science was established several years ago. She brings considerable research experience. She specializes in chronic disease management with particular attention to cardiovascular disease. Like many faculty at UCI, Professor Evangelista bleeds blue and gold. She received her Ph.D. from a northern campus in 2000, whose name I will not mention. UCLA. And later returned as a faculty member in 2007. Before that, she launched her faculty career at California State University, Los Angeles. She became a member of the faculty here at UCI in 2011 and has been instrumental in building the many academic programs that the program is known for. I just want to add that nursing science majors are some of the top undergraduate majors on this campus, and the program has also launched a number of graduate programs as well. And finally, I just want to acknowledge yet again news that you all are aware of, that nursing science received a very substantial gift, naming the school after Sue and Bill Gross. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Professor Evangelista.
Thank you so much, Dr. Haynes. So I'm nervous, I have to admit that. So let me shake it off first. So pretty much, we've heard nursing science over and over again in the introduction, and I really want to promote the fact that first and foremost, I am a nurse, and so I'm going to kind of share my journey, my career journey as a nurse and as an academician with all of you. I'm calling my presentation Looking Through the Glass of a Nurse, Past, Present, and Future. So we're kind of taking on Alice in Wonderland here. Okay, so a glimpse of my past. My formative years. As a very young child, my family migrated to the United States when I was 4 years old. I actually lived on campus of Cambridge Behavioral Hospital. It's a psychiatric mental health facility in Ohio, very small city in Ohio. My father had just finished his medical degree from the Philippines, and so this was kind of his internship and residency at the same time. My mother was actually a lab technician in the same hospital, and because we had just migrated from the Philippines, we didn't really have money for babysitting. So little 4-year-old me had a choice of either following mom to the lab, where she would be doing lab specimens, or following dad to the hospital and enjoying the clinical sites of seeing patients. And of course, at a very young age, it was definitely not basic science for me. I was always applied and clinical. So a lot of times when dad would say, I can't bring you, I would find ways to make him bring me. And I actually was named at that time, at 4 years old, the singing and dancing nurse, because I always wore a cap, as you can see here. And I actually believed at that very young age that my singing and dancing in the intensive care unit, where my dad was seeing his patients, was making the patients feel better. So that was very young. But there were challenges along the way. Obviously, as I grew up, in my elementary years, we struggled financially, and we also, I had to deal with a broken family, a divorce. So basically, at a young age of 10, I was pretty much taking care of a mom that was battling major depression. And so we ended up relocating back to the Philippines when I was going to enter my high school years. When we did that, it was a big challenge because it was kind of like, oh, you've tasted the milk and honey, and now all of a sudden you have to go back. And not only did I have to go back, but we didn't go back to the city of Manila. We went back to the most rural places in the Philippines. And my high school teachers were a challenge. It was kind of like, I would get a lecture and they would say, and the piano, and I'm like, what's a piano? And I'm like, oh, peanut. And like, so it was like, I was challenged by the fact that I couldn't speak up because I felt like I would intimidate my high school teachers. But it was really a challenge, and I had to a lot of times be very cautious about, complaining about not getting the proper education that I should be getting because I was in such a rural area. So I kind of was self-sufficient in terms of finding my own opportunities for growth. At the same time, because we were struggling financially, I also had to work at a very early age. So while I was in high school, I didn't enjoy the usual, puppy love and all of that stuff because I had to focus still on trying to keep my grades up there, making sure that I would be able to enter the state university in the Philippines. By 1980, I graduated from high school, and I've always wanted to follow my dream to become a nurse. Remember, I was the singing and dancing nurse, and I thought, well, I'm going to make this my profession. But around 1977, there was a big news about nurses poisoning patients at the VA hospital in Michigan. And at that time, obviously in the Philippines, people don't want to enroll in nursing if they can't come to the United States. So nursing programs pretty much were closing in the 1980s. And the University of the Philippines, which is the only university where I could have gotten, a free ride to get my BS degree, was almost threatening to close their programs. But luckily, they decided against that. So they enrolled 12 students in 1980. And like I said, I pretty much got a full ride scholarship to finish my BSN, and there were 10 of us who graduated from that batch. And every year now, when I know that there's some of you, there's some alum here in the audience from the same university, every time we have our annual reunions here in the States, they always say, where's batch 1985? And it's always like, well, we're the smallest batch, but here I am. I'm pretty much still representing 20% of my batch because that's all that's there. So as you can see, the passion of wanting to become a nurse made me push through with doing exactly just that and finishing my degree. As soon as I graduated in 1985, because I was a US citizen, I was able to come directly back to the United States, and I came to California. So I lived my dream for a few years. My first love, because probably I grew up in the psychiatric mental health facility with my father, was behavioral health and psychiatric nursing. But when I got my first job as a psych nurse, when census would go down, they would float me to a med-surg unit, and I would panic. I got an order one time on a 3 to 11 shift to insert a Foley catheter, and I'm like, wait a minute. You know, we've never been taught to insert a Foley catheter. In the Philippines, Foley catheters are indwelling for months and years. So nursing students don't get that opportunity to practice to do that. So I didn't insert the Foley catheter. Of course, the patient's bladder was probably getting bigger and bigger by the hour. And so when I passed on report to the 11 p.m. nurse, and I said, well, I didn't get the Foley catheter in time, so I didn't insert it. And she's like, are you kidding? So I got written up, and I was like, the biggest lesson I learned as a nurse was that, oh, this is totally unacceptable for me to have done what I just did. So I made a 360-degree turn and became a critical care nurse. And so, but as a critical care nurse, I know that we kind of pride ourselves in being superheroes because pretty much we have a dying person and we're kind of like the people that simply switch the medications and titrate them, and I learned to do that pretty well. But there comes a time as a nurse when things become very routine, and so I got to the point in 1993 where I said there must be more to life as a nurse. I went to UCLA. I actually obtained my advanced practice degree as a clinical nurse specialist, which I completed in 1993. It was probably also my way of staying away from home too. I actually had 2 children of my own, 2 young children of my own, and 4 stepchildren to raise. So it was kind of like people ask me, how did you raise 6 children and go to school? I said, well, school was the fun part. It was my escape. It was my heaven. So so I did that, and I guess I was lucky because I met mentors along the way that really made that effort to reach out to me and make me successful. And I think this is probably the philosophy I took along with me when I came into academia. So in 1997, after practicing as advanced practice nurse for a few years, I came back to UCLA for my Ph.D. And I completed my Ph.D. actually really quick. I did it in 2.5 years, but not by choice. Pretty much I did it in 2.5 years because my mentor, Kathy Dracup, was going to take the deanship at UC San Francisco, and she said, well, Lorraine, I have to transfer you to another dissertation chair. And I'm like, no way. Okay, what do I have to do to keep you? And she goes, well, finish before I leave. And so I did that. I pretty much lived I had an aero bed at UCLA, and I didn't go home. So I finished in 2.5 years. So I just put this up there because once I did get my PhD, my kids were in high school by that time, and when friends would ask them, well, what is your mom? And they would go, oh, she's a doctor, but she's a nurse, and they got really confused. And I think it's because in nursing we have so many different levels of nurses. And so towards the end, I just told them, well, just tell people I'm a nurse. I'd rather, the confusion of the PhD and being a doctor makes people think I'm a physician, and I really don't want to make them think that. So I always told them, so now then I would hear them talk to classmates going, oh, my mom is just a nurse. And I'm like, okay, well, I was happy. So I had to put that up there. So when I graduated from from UCLA in 2000. The philosophy at UCLA is you go beyond and look around your horizons. They don't try to hire their own into academia. So I went to Cal State LA, and it was an interesting 2 years because I learned to love teaching as a Cal State LA instructor or professor, assistant professor. And I almost got to the point where I was like, I'm just staying here because I'm happy. There were a lot of programs on campus that provided incentives for assistant professors to develop programs like service learning projects and things like that. And I got every award. It was so easy. I was like, oh, this is easy. I could just write a 3-page paper and then I'd get the award. And it's funny because when we had publications at Cal State LA, they would actually even call a meeting from all the people in your college, and they would acknowledge you and say, and Dr. Lorraine Evangelista published this paper, and it's like all applause. And I'm like going, it was so different at UCLA. At UCLA, it was an expectation. It was kind of like, oh, well, good, you got a paper out. So that's why I said it was so pleasant at Cal State LA that I almost stayed. But like I said, again, I was blessed with good mentors. And my mentor then recognized that I would someday be a good researcher. And she said, I'm letting loose, go back to UCLA and become a nurse researcher. So I returned to my roots in 2002. I was an assistant professor. In 2006, Governor Schwarzenegger offered $2.2 million to the school if we could, in 6 months, develop a master's entry clinical nurse program. And so I was one of the 4 selected by our dean to work on this task, and we were successful. Money does a lot of talking. When you have $2.2 million, in 6 months we got all the courses approved through Upper Campus, and we were ready to go. And then the governor turned around and said, well, I'll add another $1.5 million if you open your BSN at the same time. And for those of you that know the history of UCLA, they closed their BSN program in 1997. So this was like 10 years later, they were gonna reopen it because of the nursing shortage. So sure enough, I was very instrumental in the 2006 launching of the MECAN and the BSN program there. In 2007, we also got a $1 million UniHealth grant to develop this first sim lab. It was very basic compared to what we have here now in MedEd, but at least it got me really connected with how to build the building stones of a good school of nursing. And then in 2010, I was elected as the Distinguished Faculty Award at UCLA, and then decided, okay, it's time to move forward. It was the same year I made tenure. I also became a fellow of the American Association of Nurses, and I said, well, it's time to spread my wings. So in 2011, I came here to UC Irvine. But before I tell you about my present here at UC Irvine, I also wanted to tell you how I started my research program. Pretty much as an advanced practice nurse, I worked for 9 cardiologists at Good Samaritan Hospital in downtown LA as a clinical research trial coordinator. And what I noticed is that there were so many trials with medications and devices, and I felt like the cardiologists, and I hope there's no physicians in the audience here, the cardiologists were so fun to watch when they would have new devices. It was like new Matchbox or toys or something. So it was kind of amazing. But one of the things I didn't like about the job is I did all the writing. I did all of the IRB applications. If the pharmaceutical or device company would ask for a write-up, I would do it, but my name never appeared on anything. So when I put in my resignation with this cardiology practice, they said, well, what will it take to keep you here? And I said, authorship, and they looked at me like, go back for your PhD. So I did that, and I feel like this is kind of like me coming out of my mold and saying, I'm independent now, it's time for me to build my own career. So I had to select a research focus. You know, I entered at UCLA with my strong psychiatric background and my psychiatric nursing background, and then my strong CCU background. So I wanted to focus on something that affected population health. And so as you can see here, the evolution of what I wanted to do and felt would attract funding would be to focus on obesity, because it's one of the #1 issues that affect Americans. So what I had to show was, is there a relationship between obesity and heart failure, and are they linked? And what I was able to find is that there's a love-hate relationship between obesity and heart failure. In the fact that, and this is based on the fact that when you're obese or overweight, your risk, all the evidence shows that the risk for heart failure triples when you're obese and overweight. But once you have heart failure, then it's better to be obese. And I'll kind of explain that to you. And this is what they call the obesity paradox. So all of these researchers, and these are researchers I actually knew, were publishing between 1993 and 2005 when I was trying to also establish my own research career. And all of their research studies pretty much showed, and this was in 25,000 patients, that bigger lives longer, okay? So it was a challenge for me as a nurse in a male-dominated, physician, cardiology-dominated world of research to struggle to say, well, let's make them lose weight. Because then they looked at me like, do you know what you're saying? You're saying let's kill our heart failure patients. So it was a challenge. But pretty much what this kind of shows, the upper green area here is showing that fat is better in patients with heart failure because you have that extra padding. The adiposity provides greater metabolic reserve, and you don't go through what other patients go through with chronic disease, which is kind of like the cardiac cachectic phase, where your metabolic state is heightened, and so you're circling the drain faster. So that's kind of just the science behind it. So I wrote this first paper, and I think I learned to mentor very early. My co-author in this paper, Pamela Miller, was actually my BSN student at UCLA at that time. And this paper was simply more kind of like a white paper to say that, true, all of these research from the best researchers are showing that fat is good. But I wanted to kind of show in my research that perhaps there's a sub-cohort of patients that would benefit from some type of weight loss program. And so I was able to look for the evidence. There was very little. This was around 2005 when I was writing my first R01. You'll see that these 3 studies did support the fact in a very, very small population. This is like less than 10 patients, that if we did promote weight loss, that there's a chance that the heart failure will be reversed. So pretty much, I also tried to follow, in nursing, what we teach our nursing students is follow the clinical practice guidelines. For every disease condition, the experts will sit together and develop practice guidelines. But here you'll see the Heart Failure Society of America, where I'm actively involved as a nurse, didn't really have straightforward guidelines on nutrition. It's very broad. They just said pay attention to nutritional management of patients with advanced heart failure. They didn't say what are we going to feed the patients. And of course, we've always had this old paradigm of belief where fluid restriction is what we want to support in heart failure. I mean, those nurses in the audience will say that when we take care of them in the hospital, there's always a sign on their door to say 1,500 milliliters of fluid. So we restricted everyone automatically, and all of that is now pretty much no longer supported by the evidence. So we don't automatically put everyone on a fluid restriction now. But because I wanted to stay in close connection with physicians and cardiologists, I stayed away from the phrase weight loss. And so my research, when I started writing my first grants, started to support stabilization and improvement in body weight instead of weight loss. When I would mention weight loss, right away it would be like, boom, shoot that nurse. So finally, I came up with a feasibility study, a very, very small study to look at the impact of changing macronutrient levels in heart failure patients. That was published. And basically what we did was we compared 3 different diets on body weight, percent body fat, functional status, lipid profiles, and quality of life. So basically the 3 arms were, one arm was just the conventional American Heart Associated supported diet, which was 55% carbohydrates, 15% protein, and 30% fat, which was with no calorie restriction. So that's eating anything they really wanted as long as they were within these macronutrients. The second arm was the same as the conventional, but we restricted calories between 1,200 and 1,500. And the third arm was where we increased the protein from 15% to 30% and lowered the carbohydrates to 40%. I tried to be cautious and stay away from the high protein phrase, because people will then look at me going, oh, Atkins. I know Atkins, I've done that, no carbs and just protein. And I'm like, no, that's not healthy. That's a fad diet and that's gone. So it's only actually just increasing to 30% protein and trying to encourage vegetable proteins and things like that. So in this, I'm gonna I know in value of time, I'm gonna kind of skip to the data, but what we found in this small feasibility study is that weight loss was observed in the conventional diet, but very little, 1.3%. In the high protein, we observed 8.9% change, and in the standard protein with calorie restriction of 5.6%. What we did find that's very significant, and I think the reason why I was able to get my first R01, is that we did see that the high protein diet actually increased the lean mass, and the heart is part of lean mass. So I think at this point, by just having published this small feasibility study, this is kind of like the impetus for me getting my first R01, which was $2.5 million. So I got that, and actually it was supposed to end on December 31st of last year, but we got a no-cost extension to finish up some of our lab work. So that's been published. Actually, my project director, Marjan Mori, is in the audience. So I wanted to thank her. She actually took the initiative to publish the actual trial. And hopefully in the next few months, we'll be publishing the results. But like I said, the reflection of my president, I brought this grant over to me in 2011 to UCI. Again, it was kind of a struggle to see UCLA going, no, but stay, what can we take to keep you to stay here? So a lot of times now I smile because it makes me remember how it was such a struggle for them to let go. I don't know if it's to let go of me or to let go of the money I brought in. So anyway, now I'm part of the nursing science here on campus, and I'm proud to be so, because like Doug was saying, we've accomplished so much. Very, very small faculty, but we call ourselves mighty because we got 40 million now. Because we've done well with our academic programs, I think is what I should brag more about. We have to deal with a lot of changes in healthcare, and I think one of the things that make us very distinct is we are on top of every change in the healthcare system. I mean, currently I know that we're being integrated into the College of Health Sciences to join the School of Medicine, the School of Pharmacy and Public Health. And there's a lot, again, of hurdles that we need to overcome to make this possible. But I'm proud to say that we're all, and the faculty and staff are all very involved in this. And so I think we're gonna be able to come out of it successfully. There's a lot of barriers for the nursing programs, and one of them is lack of faculty. In fact, right now in our program, where we actually have a full undergraduate, an MS track, and a PhD, and we're wanting to open a master's entry-level program as well as a DNP, we lack faculty. There's only 5 tenure track faculty right now, and we have a strong support from clinical faculty who have been with us since we opened 2007, but we need to really have more strong faculty there. So this slide kind of just looks at why there's limited faculty, and obviously we open our PhD program so that we can have an increased faculty pool to pull from. Obviously, there's an issue of non-competitive salaries. If you look at every nursing school in the country, all the research-intensive nursing programs will have faculty needs. And so we're just one among them. In fact, we're trying to fill our director position for the nursing program, or hopefully our founding dean if we become a school in the next few years. But even that, there's so many openings across the country that it's so competitive. But I always believe we're just a nurse. Okay, we're strong, we're independent, we're motivated, and we're hardworking. So I know that we're all going to succeed as a program because we are nurses. And I'm now getting emotional. I just wanted to share a little bit more. How many more minutes? 10, okay, great. So I've expanded my research since my nutrition and heart failure research to also look at self-management behaviors in ethnic minorities. So we've done a few publications on use of wireless health devices to promote self-management in chronic disease. These are a few of my publications. I've also joined a consortium with the UC medical centers across California. There's 5 of us, UC Davis, UC San Francisco, UCLA, UC Irvine, and we included Cedars-Sinai. Our landmark paper was just published yesterday in New England Journal of Medicine. That's the top journal. My dream is to publish there as a first author one of these days, but I think being a co-author is good enough for now. So we just published the findings of this big multi-site study, like I said, on Monday. I also am looking. When I came to UCI, I was fortunate to have met Solomon Liao, who's the director of palliative care, and I also worked with Don Lombardo, who's the director of heart failure. They loved the issue of palliative care so much that I jumped on the bandwagon, and we've published a few papers in palliative care. I've submitted a few R34s and R01s to kind of support this work. So I'm really trying to expand my research programs right now. And then, of course, because I care about the patients, I always think that families or caregivers need to be given some attention. So I've published work with my international colleagues. In fact, we have a visiting scholar at the nursing program, Anna Stromberg, in the audience right now. So I've published work with her, and we've worked on looking at dyadic needs of patients and caregivers with heart failure. So that's my research. In terms of future, I really just want to make sure that for our nursing program that we stay and focus on our vision. Like I said, our strategic planning goals are now being aligned as part of the Colleges of Health Services. And I just think as long as we can support innovation, diversity, interdisciplinary education, then we'll be very successful in graduating more qualified nurses for the profession. I'm going to kind of end there, and I just wanted to say that what I've learned through the years, through my journey as a nurse and as an academician, is that nobody can do everything, but everybody can and must do something. And I think the key to our success in the nursing science program is the teamwork that we've done with each other. So thank you very much.
As is the custom of the What Matters to Me and Why program, now the floor is open to questions. There are mics in the area. Don't be shy. Well, I'll take the privilege. Professor Evangelista, thank you for your remarks. I have a question for you. What surprised you about the UCI nursing program when you arrived?
When I arrived, okay. Like I said, it's pretty much the collegiality and the support you get. I came from a bigger sister school where pretty much we were probably 5 times bigger in faculty and staff size. And so we would all see each other in faculty meetings, and it would be a hi, hello. We were social with each other. But I think what I learned in UC Irvine is that we're not just colleagues, we're friends, and we support each other through thick and thin. And I think, pretty much what I think I bring to the program is my research experiences, and I try to really, what I didn't mention actually is, in fact, our first group of doctoral students and even our second and our third group, we only opened in 2013. They're doing so well, and I think because of our mentorship as faculty, a lot of them are also getting national grants at such a very early stage of their careers. And I think it's that mentorship that we can offer to them as faculty.
What can you you share with us about what you think your own career trajectory has done for your own children? How has it influenced your children? When they look at you, what has that done for them?
I've never reflected on. Okay, well, actually, so I raised 6 children. Of the 6 children, 4 are girls, and they're all nurses. My own daughter, who's now 26, is a pediatric nurse practitioner at USC, and she always says she was a UCLA graduate, and she always tells me, "Mom, I went to the other side." So I think, they always said they didn't want to follow my footprints because they thought I was very busy, but I think they saw the passion of what I exuded when I went home. I would always say, we need to take care of other people. There's always less fortunate people around us. So. One of the things I didn't announce is I actually found out last week, aside from the Mentorship Award through the Western Institute of Nursing, and I wanted to thank our doctoral students and faculty who nominated me, I also got a Fulbright Award to bring back my research and my teaching to the Philippines. So I think it will give me 5 months to kind of bring back to the country that I came from. So I'm very happy about that.
Here we have a question.
Yeah, you mentioned the significant gift that the school or the nursing program received. What are you hoping the biggest impact on your work or your experience at the school the gift will have?
The gift is mainly to build the school building, so it's to support building the structure. I am a person, because I came from a third world country, I always believe that human resources are is our best strategy to be successful in our academic programs. And like I said, with a very small faculty, we've done exactly just that. I think the money in the school building is great. It will probably help promote our programs, but I think we have what we have to succeed right now. So.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you have 6 children, and obviously that takes a lot of juggling and career-life balance kind of working through. So can you give us some tips on how you did it?
I would go to all their basketball games and cheerlead. Luckily, my 2 kids, my daughter was a cheerleader in games that my son was playing it in basketball. So I only had to attend the same basketball games and cheerleading games. And when the audience would be, I would bring all my reading materials, but when the audience would be like clapping, I'd be clapping, "That's my son, that's my daughter." So I was at every event, and I did make a way. I think one of the things that I've done successfully is block off 1 day a week. I mean, I can be in my office from 7 a.m. to midnight every day, but I always save Friday for family. So the kids, even when they were growing up, always knew that even when I was in school or working 2 jobs to make both ends meet, that I would bring food for them on Friday. And I could see classmates would be like so envious, going, "Oh, it's Friday, your mom's here again with food." Junk food, of course, McDonald's, which doesn't support my research. Before I do, and again, I wanted to make an announcement. I mentioned that my colleague is here from Sweden, Linköping. She's also going to talk today at Sprague Hall, 4:30 to 6 p.m. Wanted to invite you guys. Building successful international research collaborations. I think part of my success as a researcher is that I made that connection with international colleagues early because I had mentors that helped me support that collegiality. So. Please attend her talk if you can.
I have another question. I have 2 elderly parents, and I've been involved in a lot of their care things recently, and thus I have intersected with a lot of nurses and care providers recently. And I have noted that many of them are from the Philippines. And I wondered if you have any insight on what it is about the nursing and caregiving professions and Philippine culture or something that intersects.
I shouldn't say what I'm saying because, like I told you guys, when I entered and graduated from nursing, I was in a class of 10. But thereafter, I mean, nursing programs in the Philippines are booming so much because it's the easy ticket to come to the United States. And so that's probably why we have so many nurses here, and good ones, I have to say, good nurses. And so I think pretty much because we are a third world country, it's so hard to survive, it's so hard to raise a family. People go into nursing with the idea that they want to come here to the United States. So, yes, Doug.
Well, there's a question that I wanted to ask, and you're the right person to ask. Throughout my life, I've been struck by the professionalism and the ability of nurses to be empathetic at the bedside during moments of crisis, fear. And I guess my question is, how are nurses trained in order to balance that, to balance the professionalism and the sort of challenges of delivering healthcare that truly is face-to-face?
Yeah, I personally think that when we select the students, it wasn't really announced that pretty much we go through 1,600 applications for 50 positions in our undergraduate. And what? Oh, 2,400. 2,400 applications for 50 seats in the nursing program is what we have to go through. So pretty much we've filtered out an average of a GPA average of 4.2 and a SAT score of 1650 to make it 300 that we have to review as faculty. And one of the things I think as faculty alike is we look at their statement of purpose and we look for the passion. I mean, I know I do, and I think all of us look for that empathy and the passion, and I remember my 4-year-old days when I would sing and dance and think, well, that's what we need to do to help patients get better, is just sing and dance and be happy. And I think even though I went through so many challenges, in my adult career with 6 children, believe me, it was a lot. I think every day I'd still go to work with a smile, and it really makes a difference. There are times when our nursing students, our undergraduates especially, they're all about getting the grades. They'll come to me going, I want an A, I want an A. And I sometimes have to sit them down and say, look, as a nurse, as a future nurse, no one's going to ask you what your GPA is. But what I care about as your faculty mentor is that you develop that skill of empathy and caring if you don't already have it. Most of the times, 90% of the times, they come in with that already, so. Yes, Daniel?
I like what you said about empathy. In our graduate programs, we are never told to have empathy for, I guess, obvious reasons. So the majority of nurses are female, and I'm wondering if you can comment on that, and yeah.
I see my doctoral student Justin in the back smiling. Actually, our number of male students is slowly increasing. They are the minority. We do make a conscious effort to increase the number of men in the nursing program, in the undergraduate and in the PhD program. So when we talk about diversity, I always push that being male in the nursing profession is being diverse. So we are working on that. I think it's a nationwide effort from all the universities and schools of nursing.
Well, are there
You have
any
one more
further
question?
questions?
Yes, Eugene.
Well, first of all, I really appreciate this seminar because I'm the neighbor of the doctor. I learned a lot of things. I don't know her, so thank you for this seminar. So one thing I do want to know, obviously any academic and in terms of your own life, very successful, good mother. And so one thing I really, because I'm also an immigrant, right? And I'm from China, and so I'm just wondering, definitely as an immigrant, you want to adapt it well and to this culture, and my question, how do you balance adapt it well and also maintain your own culture?
That is a good question. In terms of maintaining my own culture, I think that's the beauty of being in the UC system, is that they do encourage diversity. And I think we're very blessed with the fact that even our student body is diverse. And so it doesn't really take that much of an adjustment in terms of being who I am. And I think that's what I was able to illustrate in my Fulbright application when they asked, well, how are you gonna be able to adjust to educating Filipinos and working and doing your research among Filipino communities? And I pretty much said, well, I am a Filipino, And I've grown and I've lived this culture before, and I've still continued to maintain and my origins and my culture, even here as a faculty member. And I think because we respect each other so much that there's that medium for us to be able to be different and distinct and yet respected.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, please join me in giving a hand to Professor.